had some personal, professional experience with the shellfish program for many years when I worked in public health in the state. And worked very hard to get the state in line with the National Shellfish Sanitation Program and NSSP with the FDA to allow us to develop an aquaculture industry. So it's, it's an industry that's small, but it provides total with the licenses that we sell to recreational shellfishers and yourself and others. It generates somewhere between $2 and $3 million a year in revenue, plus the recreational issue that goes with it. And we're cutting somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 or $300,000 out of the budget to eliminate the shellfish program. So the economics of it is just totally out of whack. Why would you give up $2 million of revenue?
It's 160,000.
Yeah, so I mean, and it's not, and it wasn't, it was explained to me in the House budget hearing that this was at the discretion of the Commissioner of Health and Human Services. That was not true. It is not the discretion of the Commissioner. This was an item in the budget that was totally zeroed out. So you would have no bacterial monitoring of any of the estuaries and the shoreline for any of the shellfish in New Hampshire. So that would prohibit any. Even if someone illegally harvested them, they couldn't sell them out of state. They couldn't sell them in state because you wouldn't have. And it also would do the recreational, because there will be no recreational. Plus, it's not only bacterial monitoring; it's the red tide, paralytic shellfish poisoning monitoring that also would stop, which is a very serious problem. So people, even if they go out at night and want to collect some clams or pick up some mussels on their own and kind of skirt the issue, they could die because if there's PSP in the water and no one is monitoring it, they may not know, and they're going to eat shellfish contaminated with PSP, and they could have serious health consequences. So it's a public health issue, it's an economic issue, it's a recreational issue, and it's ridiculous. And I agree with you 100%. I would advise you to speak to Senator Stiles. I have talked to some of the folks on the Republican side who are also against this, and I'm working hard to try to get the Senate to put back some of the money into the covenant.
That would be my other question, how to get senators actually to pick up their phones.
So,
Senator Stiles is the only one to call me back. So.
real quickly though, I want to answer your question. You asked, why would they do this? So I've spent a lot of time in committee with a number of individuals who, they sit down and they say, look, I am a liberty-minded, I'm a libertarian, some of them do call themselves free staters. The answer actually to your question is, and I get that there are people in this country who don't agree with what I'm about to say, but they don't want government. They don't want government interfering, that's their position, in anything that's going on in the private sector, because their methodology, their approach is that the market will solve all of these problems. They don't want government. Some of these people, if you talk to them, and I'm absolutely not kidding, everybody up here will say the same thing. If your child has a mental health issue, you know what? That's a drag, not my problem. Talk to the church, talk to a charity, talk to your neighbor. If your kid doesn't have health care, not my problem, not the taxpayer's problem. And the list goes on. It's not necessarily that they're trying to put you out of business, but they're going to eviscerate government wherever they can. These guys probably would have stripped out a lot more. They just sort of calculated the bad press threshold and figured they could get away with some of this. If you heard some of the comments made on the House floor by chairmen of the committees, if you're a chair of a committee, it means that the speaker, the leadership team, believes in you, believes in your ideological approach, and knows that you're going to do the right thing. We had chairmen of finance committees, as Democrats, attempted to put some very small amounts of money back in the budget for programs that assist single working mothers with the cost of daycare, because if you can't put your child in daycare, you can't work. If you can't work, you become a liability for the community. They wouldn't hear any of it. And the chairman of the committee, his answer was, hey, in the 50s, when I used to fly a lot for an airline, my wife and her girlfriends would get, trade off child care. Why can't they do that? That was his answer.
That Ken Weiler?
Yes.
Ken
This is the
Same
same chair.
age. That was Ken Weiler from
This is the same chairperson who said the reason we spend so much on some mental health care programs and other health care programs is because the individuals providing the services are basically doing, sort of extending the treatment so they can line their pocket. These people don't live in the real world. They don't. They live in a fantasy world. I don't want to live there, and I don't know what it looks like. But they don't care, is the answer to your question. And I just don't know any other way to put it.
Thank you for speaking the truth.
I would,
Thank you.
that gentleman there. I would like to answer the question. And the question that you asked, sir, was how
how do you get them to pick up the phone? What you need to do is find out when the committee is meeting and meet them eyeball to eyeball. There was nothing so gratifying as the demonstration that took place for those of us who were trying to do other things. It picks up your spirits, because for a while you feel like a voice crying in the wilderness. Here I am and nobody's listening. So you have to meet these people, and it might be worth the time coming out of the committee. And they will talk to you. They're not going to, blow you off in the hall. Eyeball to eyeball. And that's the way to do it. That's what I feel, if they won't call you back.
Yes.
How about phone numbers for Senator Stiles?
What's the question?
How about a phone number for Senator Stiles, at home, at work?
Is it not listed on the?
The phone number is not. It just lists the committee members.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do think this has changed with this new Senate, this particular Senate, in that they're not publishing too much contact information for themselves. I only became aware of that recently, actually.
I have her number from the phone book.
Okay.
Okay, it's in Hampton, 601-6591. She lives number 1 Hayden Circle in Hampton. That's Nancy Stiles, and her office number is 271-6933. Now, this was the home phone that was in, I don't know how old my phone book is, but that's where I got it. It is not on the web page.
I think it's
So try that.
I do think it's rather unfortunate that, to say the least, that people are running for public office, representing the public, and not willing to put their contact information out there for the public to get a hold of them. And this is a new trend in the Senate.
This is a question for Representative Norelli. I'm sorry. You had spoken earlier against violence and in favor of safety, and I appreciate that. But what about the violence that your institution does, the state government does, against peaceful pot smokers every week?
I think that, as Chris was mentioning before, there are a lot of people that have different opinions and different perspectives about what the role of government is. And I think that it's very healthy to have those discussions, to talk about how much government is the right level of government. But I think that most people will agree that some level of government, whether you're here or here on that issue, is appropriate. There are some, I don't know whether you subscribe to that view or not, as Chris said, that really do believe that no government is good government. I can live with that view from them, but they should be honest about it. They shouldn't stand up and say, we have to live within our means, and we're making these cuts because we don't have any other choices, when that's not the truth. When the truth is that they are making those cuts because that's what they want to do. So, if I am running for office, I am going to tell you that I believe that there is a level of service, that public service, that government should provide. I think that it includes education. I think that it includes public health and public safety. And then we can have a conversation about what level of those you wish. And I'm happy to have that conversation with anyone. I do not serve on the Corrections Committee. I'm not an expert on the level of penalty. However, if there was any legislation in the House that had to do with whether it's marijuana or alcohol or any other activity that may currently be described as criminal, I'm happy to take a look at that and see what I think the right level of public safety, where is the right level of public safety on those issues. conversation with me about that, I'd be happy to do that.
Back in the room, lady?
Sarah, you said a few minutes ago that unless the Senate was willing to accept the higher revenue estimates, that there would be no change. And a little while before that, you said that economists do say that the revenue estimates are too low. It seems to me that strategically, that would really be the argument that should be gotten out there, because everyone in this room and letters to the editor in the paper, which I've helped generate, are all pleading for special causes, but it's too easy for the other side to say, well, sorry, we just can't afford it. And it seems to me the story that needs to be told is we can afford a lot more. And I think there probably are people in the middle who would say, you know, they don't want a smaller government for smaller government's sake. They just think we can't afford it.
And I absolutely agree. I think when the Ways and Means Committee in the House, the governor's estimates are about $300 million higher than the House estimates are. When the economists came in to do their presentations to the Ways and Means Committee, the Ways and Means Committee came back with, despite the information that they got from the economists, came back with much lower estimates. Even now, the Center for Public Policy Studies at UNH, their current estimates are still much closer to the governor's estimates than they are to the House estimates. So you would have $200 or $300 million just based on revenue estimates that would make a difference. Then, if you don't cut the $30 registration fee, if you don't cut the tobacco tax, if you don't change the reasonable comp scenario so that you put the burden of proof on the state, the only state in the country that would do that, versus the business, and at the same time, take away all the staff at the DRA so that they can't prove anything because there isn't any staff to prove it. If you don't make those changes, and or you use revenue estimates that are closer to what economists, recognized economists, are estimating, we could make some significant positive changes to the budget. Now, whether or not the Senate's going to be willing to do that, I don't know, but you know where we are right now, and that means that you have the power now to try to influence the outcome of that in the Senate.
I appreciate very much what you said. I think that's a good way, a good point to keep talking about. We hear a lot from people in the House that, you know, the state has to do the things that our families do. If you know, times are tight, we cut our expenses. Well, you know, if times are tight and you're down to the point where you still got to pay the mortgage or the rent, you still got to send your kids to